Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us in our latest webinar as we dive into the wonderful world of artificial intelligence and the AI skills outlook that we're excited to showcase for you today. So I'm Andy Derman. I'm Executive Vice President for our work across the EMEA and APAC regions globally, and excited to be joined by Eleanor Magrini, our Head of Global Research. Hi, Eleanor.
Hello, Andy.
Thanks very much for joining us. And as a key architect of this work, very excited to have your brains available to us to share some of the findings as we go through. So if anyone has any questions throughout, feel free to throw your question into the chat box. We will try our best to answer real time for you with some of our Lightcast angels working behind the scenes who might be able to help out. But if we don't, we'll endeavour to come back to you separately. So, but feel free to ask any questions as we go. So, today's topic, as mentioned, is about diving into the world of AI in the labour market, and we are very excited to have recently released our new global AI skills outlook research and resources. And today, our goal is to kind of pick out a few highlights and share a few headlines. And we hope that if you haven't already done so, you can dive in and into the research and dig a bit deeper. And really, the point of us undertaking this work is really to continue thinking about what does not just today's labour market look like, but what clues can we take from today that help us understand how the labour market is changing, so we can ensure that as communities we are building for the future, a future-ready workforce. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go forward. But before we dive into the topic and we unleash Eleanor's great wisdom on the world, just wanted to introduce Lightcast to you. If you're new to us, it's great to have you along. If you're not so new, forgive me. I'm going over old ground here, but always excited to share a little bit about who we are and why we do what we do. And at Lightcast, really, our goal is to help unlock new possibilities in the labour market, and thinking about the ever-changing world of work and how that's changing, how we can empower key agents, actors, yourselves, hopefully watching today, to be more informed and prepared to support the communities that you serve, to maximize the great opportunities and navigate through those changes, ranging from the work we do with education providers in really ensuring that education provision aligns to ever-changing local, national, global labour trends, working with communities and governments to ensure that policies and investments made help economies thrive through effective programs aligned to how the world of work is changing. And of course, serving and supporting employers to understand their own workforce skills and how those skills needs are changing, and how ultimately we can look to the labour market for clues as to ways to solve those problems and address skills shortages, gaps, and challenges there. And we do this through the power of data, in particular, labour market data. So we are collating together, I think, the world leading collection of insights and information, ranging from official statistics that we can glean from government data in various countries. And that helps us understand the building blocks to economies and how structurally labour markets are changing. And then supplementing that with big data from a range of sources, including job postings. So really understanding what employers are seeking to help us derive real granular, detailed insights. And that's one of the areas we'll be digging into specifically today. But also professional profiles, how we understand labour supply in similar terms of ultimately what skills are available where and how those have evolved, so we can learn about how the world of work is changing, and we can ensure that we connect the dots together, or more importantly, you connect the dots together to enable individuals to find their route to the great jobs and opportunities that are out there. And we deliver this to a range of customers through different services, through ranging from our software tools that allow on-demand research, deep analysis of our data, through API, Snowflake, and other platforms to access our data and integrate that into your own resources, and through our expert consultants, our applied research work, where we can dive into a topic on clients' behalf. And that's an area that Eleanor spends a lot of her time. And so the sorts of things we're talking about today are definitely the things that we can bring to your specific requirements as we go forward. So anyway, that's enough about us. That hopefully gives you a good sense of who we are. But the purpose today is for us to shed some light on brand new research that we've just released, called the Global AI Skills Outlook. And I'm very excited, as I mentioned earlier, to have Eleanor Magrini joining us today from Milan, Italy. Hi, Eleanor. So really would love to get your input as to what is it that we've built. What is the Global Skills AI Skills Outlook? Why have we done it, and how did we do it? Before we maybe dive into some of the interesting insights that you've been able to glean. So welcome. Yeah, give us a bit of background.
Thank you, Andy. I'll start with the what. What is it that we're talking about today? What have we done? So we have a new report or publication available on our website, which is highly interactive. You can scroll down the page, select different countries, select different topics, all looking at AI. AI skills in the labor market, AI jobs, and AI hotspots across the world. And the cool thing about the page is that it looks at 16 different countries in the world, and is quite global in the sense that we cover quite different regions of the world. So we have data from the US, for Canada, for the UK, a number of European countries, as well as data for Australia, New Zealand, and Singapore as well. So there's quite a lot to dive into to discover the impact of AI in the labor market. Then what was the second question? Why did we build it? What did we do around it? So we built it because we hear a lot from customers and people that we engage with that they have questions about AI. And in particular, they wonder and they're concerned about the impact that AI may have on their specific area of work. So it could be, what's the impact of AI on university provision, or what's the impact of AI on my economy? Will the people, we see mass unemployment because everyone will be displaced by AI? Or from companies, we hear a lot about how can we leverage AI? What are our competitors doing? And so we wanted to shed some light on some of these questions by using our job postings data to find some of the answer. And this brings me to your third point, which was how did you actually do it? And the answer is we looked at our job postings data for all these 16 countries that I mentioned, and we tried to understand what type of jobs were mentioning AI-specific related skills. So we used our Lightcast skills taxonomy, which is a huge taxonomy with over 32,000 different skills. And we've identified a list of 250 AI skills that are related to different elements of AI. So obviously there's artificial intelligence as a general topic. There is machine learning, then there is NLP, robotics, all the way to more modern, or not modern, but like more recent skills developments, such as, for example, the introduction of ChatGPT. And so what we did was we searched our job postings library for all the job postings that included at least one of these AI skills. And then we tried to understand what type of jobs are these jobs, what kind of trends are we seeing, and a whole bunch of other questions that we can unlock throughout the presentation today.
Super, thank you. And of course, there will be sharing links later if you haven't found the report, and I'd encourage you to dive in. But what we're going to do now is really just pick out a few of the highlights of the different sections that we've built into that report, just to, I suppose, help you navigate and take some of the key findings away ahead of perhaps diving in more specifically around your particular country of focus or point of interest. So as we go on that journey, let's start, I suppose, with the big question, which is, what are we seeing out there at the headlines? Where, how is AI impacting the labor market, and where? So what did we find?
That's the starting point, isn't it? Everyone wants to know what's the impact of AI on the labor market. Most of the narrative around this has been around dramatic, sensationalist headlines about all jobs being overtaken by AI, people being out of work. But in reality, one of the things that we are seeing is that AI is not just about job losses. In fact, what we are seeing is that AI is also creating demand and new jobs. And we've seen these trends growing over time in pretty much every country across the world. So if we've taken a 10 years, so from 2014 to 2023, and we look at the share of job postings mentioning AI related skills in all the different countries, what you see is that pretty much in every country, the number of job postings mentioning AI has increased quite dramatically. Now, it doesn't look as dramatic here because, well, there's Singapore up there that's skewing a bit the picture. But if you look at the numbers, for most places, starting in 2014, there were less than 1% of job postings mentioning AI. For most of them, the number is now above 1%, reaching sometimes in 2022 even 2%, which is twice as many as before. So it's quite a consistent number. It's quite a big number. And however, there are some differences between different places. We see Singapore up there leading the way, but then we also see the United States and Ireland having a high share of AI job postings, where on the other end we have New Zealand and Italy as the countries that have fewer job postings mentioning AI. But the trend is consistent right across. Over the past 10 years, the number of AI job postings has increased quite dramatically.
Is there anything, yeah, interesting? Is there anything we should read into the 2022 to 20, so the most recent year trend? Because it does look like there's been a bit of a downturn, so to speak. So have we all given up on AI? Is it a fad, or is it here to stay? It's just something else has been factoring into that.
That's a good catch, good observation of the data, Andy. I think there's a couple of things to consider there. That was one of the things that we pondered upon when we saw the results, because we've been doing research on AI for quite some time. The trend was going up, and then all of a sudden, everybody talks about AI, but AI is going down in job postings, which is counterintuitive. And then we digged a little bit underneath that, and what we found is that it isn't that AI is becoming less important, it's more that the type of jobs that normally require AI, recruitment for this type of jobs is slowing down at the minute. So we've talked in previous webinars about the slowdown due to the tech lays off and tech slowdown in general in terms of recruiting. Obviously, AI is a big part of the tech world. And so as we see companies readjusting and reducing their hiring decisions, we see this reflected in the share of job postings overall in each country mentioning AI. But it is not to say that AI is becoming less relevant in specific occupations.
Yeah, interesting. So we suspect it's probably more of a macro impact on that segment of the labor market than necessarily a trend to be extrapolated specific to AI being a fad and going away in that respect. Yeah, interesting. So those are the headlines. We're going to dig a bit deeper now, aren't we? And first of all, you mentioned earlier in how we've defined and collated AI. We've broken it down into further subcategories. So what can you tell us about what we're learning through that breakdown?
Yes, I find this one quite interesting actually, because the size of the bubble tells you how often a specific subcategory gets mentioned. The bigger the size, the more mentioned that category gets. And it's interesting how to see how artificial intelligence is actually not the first category, but machine learning is. So it's the one that takes up the highest share of job postings compared to the others. And then, yes, artificial intelligence as a general term and as a general category still plays a big role. But alongside it, we are also seeing different type of AI skills being mentioned right across the different clusters. And we see, for example, neural networks, autonomous driving, also playing an important role, as well as generative AI also coming up quite significantly. So it's a mix. Machine learning and AI are still taking the lion's share in terms of job postings mentioning AI skills, but we're also seeing a wide range of other categories of related to AI also coming up in job postings.
And would it be fair to say that perhaps what that's reflecting is the more mature end? So if you think about the evolution of AI, machine learning was perhaps one of the early areas that became a bit more standard in the labor market. So it's just been around longer, whereas generative AI, autonomous driving, maybe, whilst have been in and around, they've been very niche for some time, and now they're really starting to become a bit more mainstream. So might we see those bubbles growing and therefore relatively other the more established ones starting to shrink away? Or do you have any other thoughts on that?
No, it's a good theory. And I mean, I remember last year we looked into the number of job postings mentioning ChatGPT, so Gen AI, in the Gen AI space. And it went from pretty much zero up until at some point in 2023. And then it started being like something like 60, 120, 300 and skyrocketing. So I think you're probably right in the sense that the pace at which different strands of AI have been developed influences what we're seeing in this chart. And perhaps in a year time, we'll redo a similar webinar and the weight of these different bubbles would have changed.
Yeah. And I think that's a really important point that, as we saw from the first slide, this is evolving through the labor market over time. So we're just drawing a line in the sand right now as to looking back up till the end of 2023, but we're already nearly 9 months into the year now, and perhaps we'll see a slightly different picture as we continue to chart this. So yeah, very interesting. So we've talked about the general headline, and then kind of thinking about the constituent parts and the relative importance of those currently. What about the jobs that we're finding this in, then finding AI skills and the demand for AI skills? What can we learn from that?
So the first thing we can learn here is that obviously a demand for AI is quite high in tech jobs. And what you see here is, and it touches upon on what we were chatting about earlier in terms of the trends over time. What you see here is the share of job postings for some specific tech jobs mentioning AI, both in 2023 and in 2021. And what you see here is that when you look specifically at some type of jobs, demand for AI is quite high. Pretty much, I mean, 50% of job postings related to computer scientists in the US right now require AI related skills. This has pretty much been the same compared to 2021, but for other areas, like for example, web developers, it has increased over time. So what we're seeing is that when you zoom in into specific occupations, the occupations that they are requiring AI, the tech roles that are requiring AI, are either increasing the role that AI is playing in these roles. So this role is playing, and I got stuck. But this AI AI is playing a bigger role over time into the specific occupations that require it. And one of the cool things that I should have mentioned this on the previous slide, but I might as well just mention it now. As you see at the top, this is a screenshot of the page. And as you see here, we've highlighted US, and the chart that you see here on the graph is representing of the example for the United States. But if you go on the website, you can pick the country that you want to look into, and you can see different results for your country. Spoiler alert, I can tell you this as one of the main findings as I've looked at the different countries. In pretty much every country, what we see is that the share of job postings requiring AI skills in 2021 was lower than it is today. So AI demand is high and rising right across tech roles, right across the world, not just the United States, which we're using as an example here.
And on that point, are we seeing different, whilst it's tech jobs that are clearly driving this, and we've got the general trend, if we looked at different countries, would we pretty much see the same roles, or is there a slight variation in different parts of the world as to kind of the most in demand AI skill roles?
There are some nuances, but the general trends are pretty much the same. So the roles that you see on these slides requiring the most AI skills tend to be pretty much the same right across the world. And then there may be instances in which the number is not 50%, it could be 100%, it could be 40%, that varies. It also varies depending on countries' culture in terms of how employers write job descriptions in different places, but they all tell a similar story in terms of the type of roles requiring AI skills.
And of course, as you mentioned, head to the website, click on the different countries, and you'll be able to see some of those variations as we go. So yeah, interesting. So probably not a biggest shock that it's tech roles that are dominating. And you mentioned the connection between some of the kind of tech layoffs, maybe having a macro effect on some of the trends. But is it just tech jobs that we're seeing AI? Is it just confined to that part of the labor market, or are we finding AI skills becoming a more ubiquitous demand across the labor market?
I think this is a really interesting point, and also one where we start seeing some of the country differences that you were asking about before. Here, in particular, in this slide, we're not just looking at AI, but a specific subset of AI, generative AI. So, ChatGPT and the likes, in simple terms. And what we see is that demand for these types of skills is also starting to appear in roles that have nothing to do with AI. So the first one there, writers. What have writers have to do with AI? When you think about AI, you normally think about your software engineers, computer scientists, very tech roles. But what we're seeing with the latest developments, especially around generative AI, what we're seeing is that this is widening the type of roles that are being affected by AI. And one of the things that I would say here, and is also one of the key findings of the research, is that AI isn't really taking over jobs. Rather, it is augmenting different tasks within roles. And so, for example, a writer coupled with ChatGPT can write much faster, can write much better. So it's like a superpower in a sense, improving the efficiency of a specific roles, like in the case of a writer. We see that with search engine optimization specialists. Again, we see ChatGPT being mentioned, but also more generally generative AI. We see it with researcher and research associates. This is people like me, basically. It's like, how do you use it to enhance your research? And again, it can help you quite a lot in terms of with the writing, but also with literature reviews and things like that. There's a lot of opportunities, and I think in time we will see further developments on the ramifications of the implications of this in the labor market. But as I started at the beginning of these slides, one of the interesting things here is that when you click on different countries are at different stages at which this Gen AI is permeating the labor markets. So this will be one to keep an eye on in the coming months and years.
That's interesting, isn't it? And as I reflect on the bubbles chart, for want of a better term, there are some of the bigger aspects of AI are perhaps more of the origins of AI in the labor market, and quite niche, aren't they? Machine learning is a pretty um, niche skill set that aligns to a particularly niche part of the labor market. Whereas as we've seen the rise of generative AI, that has maybe become the democratization process, and we're starting to see those aspects evolving into the wider labor market, where other parts of AI, perhaps more more foundational early stage AI, has been quite niche. So interesting to see, and as that was a relatively small, but we know, as you described, has been rapidly growing, it's not a surprise to see more variation around the world in different areas as that adoption gets taken on. And we've seen different areas take a very different policy view as well. I recall in Italy, Chat GPT being banned for a period of time while legislation was reviewed and considered. And of course, in across Europe, there are new policies and rules around AI, particularly at the generative end of things. So that will also influence perhaps some of the regional trends that we're seeing and the take up in different parts of the world. So yeah, as you keep peeling back the onion layers, that's where you start to get the really interesting tidbits and probably the more tactical, useful components that we can bring to real life questions. So yeah, fascinating. And let's keep digging, shall we? We've talked about AI in terms of job roles and demands and how those skills are changing. Are we seeing that that's having a material impact on earnings power? Positive, negative? What's the story here?
Well, that's the thing. What we're seeing is that employers are willing to pay a premium for workers that have skills in AI. And so this should be it's quite interesting as I think to see as it develops over time, because it presents, as, again, is not just about job description. There are actually is a lot of opportunities being created by AI, one of them being the opportunity of higher salaries. So workers that are willing to pay, are willing to invest in AI skills, in learning these new technologies, and they are able to work with it, well, they're more likely to find employers that are actually willing to pay for these skills that are still quite scarce in the labor market, and therefore are still quite valued by employers. And we see here that, the type of roles that are seeing a salary premium associated with AI are quite varied. On the page, we show both managerial and non-managerial roles, so how these different type of jobs are being affected. But as you see here, pretty much quite a lot of managerial roles in all different parts of a business. So we're looking at marketing, finance, sales. All of them are affected positively when AI skills are involved. So there is a great opportunity here for workers who have the skills to work with AI.
And when we talk about salary premium, what we're talking about is in effect taking a role like your general operations managers and looking at the jobs that state they seek AI skills versus a subset that don't explicitly seek, and we're looking at the variation in the salary between the two. So this isn't just what people are being paid. This is the difference between those two groups, and that's a pretty big old big old leap for some of those roles, right?
Yeah, it's quite a consistent gap in between the two, and you're totally right. Basically, this is the difference between what you're paid without having AI skill or by having AI skills, and yeah, it's quite a big gap.
Wow, that's certainly motivating, I imagine, to discover this. So we talked a little bit in the first slide about country level trends, but we've been able to dig a little bit deeper into that. So I think we're looking here specifically at Gen AI as an example subset here. But are we seeing some obvious regional variations, not just country by country, but actually within countries now?
Yeah, I think that going back to what we were saying earlier about the adoption of Gen AI in different non-tech roles and how that varies across countries, when we zoom out and go back to the wider picture, we see this also applying in general in terms of demand for Gen AI in different labor markets. The US is leading the way. May not be a surprise to anyone, but definitely a reinforcement of how it is driving a lot of the innovation around AI. We see the bigger bubble both on the east and the west coast. Again, traditional places in terms of being strong in driving innovation. But it's not just the US. The US has got the biggest demand and it is the leader, but we're also seeing hotspots coming up, for example, in Europe, with Germany, for example, being one of the countries where we see some of the mentions around Gen AI, as well as Ireland and the UK. So it is quite varied.
Yeah, interesting. So digging further into the weeds, then I think this is particularly fascinating. So as you described with the salary premier example, the joy of the data set, the size, the billions of job postings that we got, we can build really great sample sizes on a global level, and start to look at the similarities and differences between different roles, and think about AI, those subset of AI skills, and what role they're playing potentially in career transitions, etc. So tell us a little bit about that, and then we've got the specific example, haven't we, on the screen there? What's the story behind this one?
This is actually one of my favorite slides, favorite part of the research, and also one of the things I'd encourage you to look at the details of in the web page. Because basically, what we did with the data was to try and look at how AI may affect career opportunities for people. And one of the key findings we found here is that AI can be a game changer in this space because it can open up some career opportunities that were not available to people before. And what do I mean by this? I mean that there are some tasks now that can be much more easily done with AI, so they can be augmented by AI. And so it means that workers do not necessarily have to have these skills. They just need to know how to use AI to get the results around these skills, to be able to hop from one job to another that perhaps was not available to them before because they lacked some of these significant skills for the role. So here on the slides, you see the specific example of an e-commerce analyst, and how one of the next step jobs for this role could be around becoming a SEO optimization specialist. And what you see and what we do in our tools is we analyze a lot of the job postings. We map the skills profile of each job postings, and then we look at the similarity between the skills profiles of different roles, with the idea of creating pathways in between occupations that have more skills, similar skills profile. And what you see here in the middle is a bunch of skills that you need to hop from being an e-commerce analyst into becoming a SEO optimization specialist. And the skills in yellow here are AI enhanced skills. This means that they are skills that if you know how to use things like ChatGPT or other AI related tool, you can easily do, and that helps you transition to the other job. And this is quite important, not just because, as you see on the slide, there is, again, salary premium consideration associated with this jump, but also because it widens for companies, it widens the tools of candidates that they can draw from. And for individuals, it widens the options in terms of the type of jobs that they may want to take on. And this it also offers us a very practical way to look at how AI is impacting the labor market, and how we can use this kind of information to inform policy decisions at the company level, at the state level, at the strategic level for a country, for example. And for this reason, one of the things we did was we created a number of these pathways. I think we have 10 different options that you can use and explore on the website. And you can pick your initial occupation and see what career opportunities it opens up to have AI, including, for example, we have one around HR specialist and business development, and then a wide range of others as well.
That's really, really fascinating, and really starts to get to some practical applications. And I always love when we really get down to the skills layer and start to compare roles together, to realize that there's more that's similar between a lot of roles than is different. And the key is, what are those keys that unlock that transition, and empowering individuals to not have to go right back to the beginning and retrain all over again, but actually supplement and evolve their skills. And as AI skills, as we've seen, become more prevalent in the labor market, it's only natural that they're going to be some of these enablers. And this example shows a tangible return on investment for investing in skills, whether that's on the employer investing in their workforce, or whether that's individuals um, adding skills and capabilities to help them progress in the labor market, or investments that governments make on behalf of their population to enable them and to drive the economy forward as well. So yeah, a fantastic and practical example. And and I agree. Definitely one to go in and have a little play with on the website as we go. So thank you, Eleanor. Really interesting. I mean, that's just a snapshot of the highlights, and the research itself. Of course, in such a big topic, there's so many more avenues we could go down, but uh, we don't have so many Chat GPT robots lined up next to you to exhaust all the options. But we think we've pulled out. I think the most insightful components, and hopefully is motivating all of you to want to keep searching and digging in more. And certainly, if you are already Lightcast customers, you have a lot of this data at your fingertips, and we'd be delighted to support you in leveraging and understanding those skills so you can do your own analysis in your own um, areas of interest. And I think just to bring this together, then as we seek a conclusion from some of the headlines here, I think Eleanor, we're probably surfacing these three key takeaways, aren't we? That it, we're seeing a lot of job augmentation as a real driver of change in the labor market. So using AI skills to really help evolve within and enhance productivity and capability. So not necessarily about taking jobs away per se, but making job holders more productive in what they do. So as you say, that sort of superpower exoskeleton that just means we can do more with our time, and be more productive with our time. But there are new ways of evolving and through the labor market as well. That AI unlocking those AI skills can perhaps pull out new trajectories in the labor market that otherwise wouldn't have been there. So a real enabler for folks moving through. But and we are seeing clearly certain hotspots and some of those variations, particularly as you described, as we dig into the specifics and think about some of the cultural and wider contextual labor market contextual items there. So it's not, whilst there is a clearly a rising tide all around the world, there are some unique attributes in different parts of the world, which is interesting. And I think as we were discussing this, I think it's easy to reflect on a few years ago when we all and our community started really thinking about AI, and we heard a lot of scare stories and dystopian stories, a lot of headlines of jobs that will be eradicated, and maybe in time that may still come to pass. But I think what we're seeing is more of an evolution here rather than a robot revolution, so to speak. And it's encouraging now to have a good few years worth of data to be able to research into that. And I know a lot of academics continue to study, and we do a lot of work, and a lot of this data is being used by some of the world's leading academics in this field, to continue to study and understand here. But as always, the point of having this information, whilst yes interesting, is to act upon it. And I think one of the great challenges, whether it's about AI or anything else in the labor market, is that if we're not informed as organizations, as stakeholders in communities, as individuals, as workers and students and potential students and potential workers, if we don't see these trends happening, it's very difficult to get on board, isn't it? And so the point of surfacing a lot of this is to highlight that actually, if we can embrace this, if we can empower people to invest time and effort and money into building these skills, it will really help people progress in the labor market. But of course, the counter to that is if people don't jump on board, there is a danger still that they will get left behind as we see this becomes more ubiquitous. And, a lot like we would have, if we'd have doing this 25, 30 years ago, we'd have been talking about IT and technical skills, which first rose in a niche area and then gradually found their way to the wider labor market. But actually, we've seen clearly people getting on board with those skills and learning those skills, and they just become de facto now in how we evolve. Mean that we can embrace all angles of the labor market. But those that haven't been able to invest time and skills development there, of course, have maybe struggled a bit more than they otherwise would have done in the labor market. So I think that's probably our takeaway. Anything to add to that, Eleanor?
No, I think that was a great recap. And yes, I completely agree with you. For me, the main takeaway is really not a revolution. It's an evolution. It's changing. We need to keep looking into it because we are seeing that the pace with which these changes are coming along is faster. But it's an evolution. It will be one thing at a time. And being able to give practical recommendations about how you can leverage some of these skills can open up a lot of opportunities for everyone in the labor market, which is
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, that pace is the piece of concern, isn't it? That if we don't keep up with it ever more, but that's the point. That's why we do what we do with our data, and actually is a great example of our approach with the Lightcast Skills Library, which is an evolving, growing, learning library of skills that is looking to at the labour market. Is we're crowdsourcing input from actors in the labour market to ensure that the Lightcast Skills Library evolves with the changes we're seeing in the labour market, so we can track more of this and certainly those emergent skills as well. So I think evermore it's about things moving forward rather than static lines in the sand, isn't it, in terms of the pace that we're dealing with. And of course, the goal of this research hopefully is to inspire you guys as education providers, as community and government leaders, as employers, to think about, well, what does this mean for me? What does this mean for my business, my community, my stakeholders, for me as an individual? And so, as Eleanor has been very helpfully referencing throughout, it's really, the goal of this research is to inspire, but the data that sits behind this, and hopefully the data that you have access to already as Lightcast customers, means you can bring this to your world. And as education providers, think about how do we ensure that the emergent growth of AI skills demand is built into how we educate and how we create a future ready workforce through the education system. How do we empower regions and governments and policymakers to understand what these trends will mean for the state of the current economy, where prudent investments can really help upskill and develop the local population and the local economy to take advantage of these great opportunities. And seeing those hotspots in the US are great inspiration, hopefully, to the role that economic development and government investment and other policy focus can really unlock new opportunities. And we look at that. A few years ago, you'd see San Francisco, sure, but where else? Whereas now there are many hotspots around the US and the wider world. And then, as employers, as Eleanor was mentioning, really thinking about your current workforce. Are they future ready? How do you ensure that you are empowering your current workers to develop the skills that will help your business move forward, help them thrive in their roles? And how do you bring those skills into the business to help set your workforce onto a path of enhanced productivity and business success as well? So hopefully you've taken a few things from today, and thank you again, Eleanor, so much for sharing some of your thoughts from the findings and the research. And as we've talked about, be sure to go to the Lightcast website and dig into the research itself. A lovely little microsite there where you can dive in and change some of the parameters so you can explore the data. I know we'll send a link round with a recording of this session, and I'm sure it'll be in the chat box as well for you. But there's a URL on the slide there as well. So thank you very much. Thank you, Eleanor, for sharing your knowledge and your experience with this. Great piece of work, and I think it's going to be very well received. I hope all of you guys watching today and watching back on recordings have found it of value. You know where we are. Feel free to reach out to Lightcast if you have any questions or this has inspired you to want to dig deeper. Obviously, as customers, be sure to go back to your data and have a dig around and let us know, and your account managers know if there's anything more we can do to help you understand that. And if you are not currently Lightcast customers, we'd love to hear from you and think about how we can empower you with this information as well. So come visit us at lightcast.io, reach out. We'd be delighted to chat. So thank you very much. Cheers, Eleanor. Thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll see you on the next one.